Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Grimberg. I'm the CEO of Proofpoint Marketing. For those of you who don't know me, for those who do, welcome back. Great having you all here. If you are here, please say hi, pop a message in the comments. Looking forward to chatting with everybody today. As always, toward the end, we're going to open things up to live Q&A on the topic, or I guess really anything that people want to talk about that's related to it. For those of you who've been here before, you know that we generally talk about and very much believe in building relationships at scale through marketing and in your go-to-market in general. So we're definitely going to be talking about that. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about building relationship velocity. It's really the concept that we've built here at Proofpoint Marketing, and we're going to focus on dispelling some myths, adding some nuance, and changing some mindsets here today, hopefully. Definitely for anybody here who's new, who hasn't been here before. So again, if you're just joining, welcome. Pop a message in the chat. I want to know you're here. And we're going to get going here in a minute. In the meantime, like I said, pop a message in the chat. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and what you're excited about learning today or hearing about today. I'm always happy to take some tangents and answer questions and things like that. Obviously, I've got talking points prepped as usual, but happy to be flexible here. All right. Well, for those who are here, let's get started. Tony, what's up? Good to see you. All right. So we're going to be talking about relationship velocity, and there are three core concepts I'm going to be covering. And as I mentioned in the beginning, going to be dispelling some myths and adding a lot of nuance to, I think, common, I guess what I'll call marketing platitudes that are out there. Oftentimes what we'll see is when something is said often enough, one of two or maybe even both things happen. It loses its impact, and or going against this thing, whatever it might be, almost becomes like heresy. So I'm going to be going against a few things, I think, here today. And we'll see what happens. The three things we're going to talk about more specifically are, there's a core belief, and I think thing out there that, the best brands are those that build relationships with their customers. I think everybody generally, when they hear that, they start nodding, going, yeah, definitely. But almost nobody talks about, okay, but how? What does that actually mean for a brand to build relationships with its customers? How can you do that from a strategic go-to-market perspective? What does that look like tactically? there's almost never any nuance about that. So we're going to dive, I think, pretty deep into that. Another one out there that we'll talk about is, that to be successful in marketing, you need to understand and execute against a buyer journey. And I will argue that buyer journeys are generally worthless, at least the way that most talk about them and the concepts that are out there. And I'm not even talking about yes, I think we all know that they're not linear. Forget that part. I think we can generally all agree on that. But it's the relationship journey that's actually entirely different proposition that can actually be predictable. We'll dive into that. And then last but not least is this pervasive need to really focus on decision makers. And the question is that really where you should be putting your focus? And it's a yes and type answer. And we'll dive into that too. And all of this, again, is in service of the general premise that we need to be building relationships at scale with our marketing. And again, I think there are a lot of these core either myths or platitudes out there that people get stuck on and don't know how to activate against. Yeah, Tony, for sure. Tony saying we get stuck on a POV contagion and echo all the buzz things. Yes, I think I would say in marketing, I see this happening more than any other industry. It's something kind of catches fire and then somehow everybody is parroting it without actually understanding it and understanding the nuance. And nobody's really doing anything with it. We see this happen a lot. So, all right, I'm going to start diving in here. As always, if anyone's got a question, please don't be shy. Pop your question in here. I am going to be asking for volunteers later on to go through some examples of things like that. And if you do volunteer, I'm going to entice you with a little bit of a swag giveaway. At least I'm going to try to. So stay tuned for that. All right. So this whole thing of people build of the best brands build relationships with their customers. Yeah, I think in general, I would say we all probably agree with that statement. But again, what does that mean? And what I will argue is that people don't actually build relationships directly with brands. They build affinity to brands through their relationships with ideas, people, and groups. So what do I mean by that? Let's take, a lot of this really gets talked about in the B2C space. It obviously permeates itself to the B2B space. Let's think of a brand that we all probably know and either love or maybe don't care about for one reason or another. Patagonia. Okay. People don't have necessarily a direct relationship with Patagonia, the brand. What they have is they love the idea that brand represents of the giving back and being all about the environment and all those things. That's what people relate to. That's the relationship. They have the relationship with the idea behind the brand. All right. The same thing happens in a lot of other instances. Let's look at, actually before that, one other thing. People build relationships with people, ideas, and groups. So let's talk about the people. Best example to think about is sports. Okay. Think about your relationship with sports teams. Very likely at some point, you either built a relationship to that team through a person or people, say family and friends, right? They like them and you like them because they like them, right? That's actually people and groups. But then the other option is maybe you like a particular player and you built an affinity to that team because that player's on that team. Now, if that sports team, the marketing team there does their job, that affinity will stay whether the player stays or goes. So let's think about that in the B2B context. So an example I'll throw out there is, I'll give two. So two of my personal favorite B2B platforms right now. Maybe you've worked with some of them, and these are both SaaS examples. One is Take Command Health. So we're a small business. We use something called a QSARA or an HRA for our healthcare benefits. All right. Here is my relationship with that brand, or how it started and how it got built. Okay. First of all, their messaging, once I got there, their messaging is, I've got it written down here so I don't forget, stop doing employee benefits the hard way. Stop doing employee benefits the hard way. It gets at a core pain point that every single small business owner has, which is employee benefits suck. Dealing with them is awful. It's a pain in the butt, especially healthcare. It's a pain. Nobody's happy. It's bad. So that's number one. Okay. Now, how did I get to know that brand? Well, they are recommended to me by our accountant, people. I talked to a group of SMB owners who I'm connected with. That got confirmed, sort of the recommendation got confirmed. That's groups. I came to their site, their messaging, the idea behind what they do really resonated. That's ideas. Now, it doesn't stop there, and it can't, because this idea then needs to filter all the way down into everything the company does. So in their case, it does, right? They have premium features that really make the benefit much more useful and also easy both for us to administer and for employees to use. Great. Their customer service, very timely, very knowledgeable. If there is a question, which there's not often one, but sometimes there is, they're very quick to answer it, not just a, hey, here's a link to our help article. All right, so that entire idea, the essence of that POV permeates the entire business. Okay, I'll give you another example. A company called SalesReach. So it's a sales enablement platform, although we use it for a heck of a lot more than that from a use case perspective. And how do we know about it? Well, it just so happens that we know their founder. He used to be our neighbor. We met him prior to that even, et cetera, built up a relationship. At some point, that platform, we saw that platform being used by others whose opinions were respected. We reached out to Josh, made the purchase. And we believe in the idea of building better buying experiences. It supports our agency ethos about building relationships. And oh, by the way, that platform also helps us build relationships at scale, et cetera, et cetera. That's our ethos, or our brand POV, I should say. It supports that. Okay, so there's a couple examples. Tony, you mentioned Slack. Definitely, I think Slack is a great example of that. I don't know if anybody else has examples. Pop them in the chat. Happy to talk through those. But again, if you want to build relationships, if you want your company to have relationships with your target customers, it's not about building that relationship directly. It's not going to happen. You need to build affinity. Okay, I'm going to share a couple of things here. I just clicked the wrong thing. Sorry, folks. I was trying to share my screen. There we go. Okay. People build affinity to the brand. I've already mentioned this. Okay. So, and one other thing, like why affinity? Why is that important? Because you can buy awareness, right? You can buy impressions, you can buy views, all that kind of stuff. You cannot buy affinity. You either have it or you don't. You have to earn affinity. And you earn that affinity by allowing your people to build relationships with your customers, by having a POV and an idea that's so powerful that people believe in it and it resonates, by participating in or creating a group, a community that people want to be part of. And the middle here is the sweet spot, right? Now, not everything needs to be here. Not every single activity that you do needs to include all three, but whenever you can, it's extremely, extremely powerful. Okay, let's look at the two examples I mentioned with Sales Reach and Take Command, right? And then, by the way, they're not always together at the same time. So both of them had strong ideas that resonated with me and the pain points that we were having. For Sales Reach, pain points in the sales process. For Take Command, for pain points and benefits. Okay, their ideas resonated. People with Sales Reach, I had a relationship directly with the founder, and with Take Command, I had relationships with people whose opinions I trusted that shared the ideas with me. And then that's also where groups come in as well, right? With both those examples, they're kind of loose definitions of groups, let's just say. Okay. So now let's talk about journeys. I mentioned in the beginning, buyer journeys are worthless. And all of these concepts, whether are going to connect together. So we'll make sure we tie all the dots, if you will, connect all the dots for you. Again, I mentioned, we all know that journeys are not linear. I'm not going to sit here trying to argue that point. I think we all probably agree on that. Here are the issues with traditional journeys. Number one, just the concept of a buyer journey itself. Your goal shouldn't just be to get somebody to buy. Your goal should be to build a customer, build a relationship. That's a long-term deal. That's not just a buying decision. Buying decision is only the middle step, let's just say. Okay, let's say customer journeys. Fine. Still not a great, the way that it's generally done. Here's why. First of all, there is too much focus on touch points and channels. If you look at traditional buyer journeys and customer journeys, they're almost always looking at, okay, what are the touch points that our customers are having with us? Which channels are they in? Okay, fine. But that's more about you, the seller or the marketer. It's not really as much about the prospective customer. And with that, most of these customer journeys are trying to predict the best path to revenue in terms of touch points and channels. Which content is most likely to get somebody to move to the next step, and which content is likely to get them to go to the next step, the next step, and the next step. It's literally impossible to do that. Not just because the journey isn't linear, but it focuses on the wrong thing. It's a chicken and egg kind of deal, right? Are they Is this the best path because this is what you have in market? Or is this the best path because that's actually what they need? And that's the problem with that approach. And last but not least, most of these focus too much on kind of the traditional persona, right? None of this considers what preconceived notions and past experiences your prospective customers are coming in with. That's probably one of the most important things. If we think about it from a category design perspective or a category perspective in general, if it's an existing category, they're going to be using their past experiences and comparing you to them, good and bad, whether you like it or not. Even if you're going to redefine or try to take over an existing category, people still, by nature of being human, they will compare you. And they will use their past experiences with similar, even if they're not the same, vendors and products. They're going to compare you to them, good and bad. If it's a new category, people are going to be skeptical just by nature because it's new. They don't understand it. Yes, your job is to educate, etc., but they're just, again, by nature, going to be skeptical. So what do I recommend instead? And it's the relationship journey. Why the relationship journey? It's because you can't predict where they're going to enter and what experiences they have, but you can predict the psychology and the behavior. So let me share one more thing here. Okay, so here's what you can predict. You can predict that after every single touch point that somebody has with your brand, they're going to go through these 5 psychological decisions or decision points. First of all, something's got to get them excited, either to start the process or to continue the process. Second is they're going to go through some form of skepticism. It's inevitable. Then they will potentially go through some questioning. Then they'll become convinced and they'll become committed. Now you'll notice some of these are internal, some of these are external. So to make sure that, I can talk through this in terms of any example. However, I'd love to get a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer? And I promised that I was going to entice you with some swag. If you come chat with me right now, you can have one of these, either for you or if you want to give them away to a marketing friend. So ones are custom marketer persona deck of cards. This one's our custom Cinco game. Think of it like Uno, but for marketers. So anybody want to come chat with me? I'm going to use you as a guinea pig and talk through this process as an example. Anybody? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going. Give you my example. All right. Nobody wants to. Fine. So I'm going to pull this back up, actually. All right, so let's talk to this. The main thing here, and I mentioned, this is predictable. This behavior is 100% predictable. And it's predictable because It's the same on a personal level as it is on a professional level. Doesn't matter. Okay, so let's play this out on a personal level. Think of it like dating. Okay, think back to when you were dating your significant other initially. Something you did or wore or said or wrote likely got them excited. The idea of you got them excited. Okay? That could be internal, meaning they got excited sort of in their heads, or it could be external where they shared that excitement with a friend. Oh, this person's awesome. Okay, great. Then they're probably skeptical about something. Let's assume you went on your first date and your fashion sense was maybe a little bit off. Okay. I'm talking personally here. Apparently my fashion sense was off when Gabby and I first met. So I've been told. Right. They might go, man, I don't know. This person just does not put themselves together very well. Okay. Now maybe that's a big deal. Maybe it's not. If it's a big enough deal, they might talk to somebody about it. They talk to their parents, to their friends, whatever. If it's not a big enough deal, they might go, yeah, whatever. I'll try it again. You know, everything else was great. Now they're committed. And then usually they're going to share that commitment with somebody else. They're going to share with a friend, hey, I'm going to go on a second date, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. This all keeps going. After every single interaction, these same 5 decisions happen. Now, they might happen very quickly, or it might take a while. And again, there's this sort of fast track. If you can get past their internal skepticism, you fast track the process. Okay. The same exact thing happens in B2B. 100% same thing. Okay. I'm gonna ask one more time here. Does anybody want to come chat about a B2B experience they've had? All I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions and we're going to think through and illustrate this process. Again, it's 100% true. Every single one. Anybody want to talk through a recent or a buying experience? As I'm going to talk through mine, which I kind of already started not too long ago. Yeah, I'm going to keep going here. So let's take my example of Take Command Health. Okay. There was a pain point, right? The pain point was we needed to offer benefits as we were scaling. And actually, I forgot one very important influencer in the group, and this gets at people. We were actually working with a business coach at the time. And one of the things he recommended is not going the traditional benefits route. The first recommendation came from him. So I forgot about that until just now. Okay, I know somebody I trusted. It was actually a former CEO that I worked for. Now, at the same time, I had been, high enough up in other companies prior to starting Proofpoint that I had seen the pain and the annoyingness of healthcare benefits, both from a employee perspective and the employer perspective. So I was already coming into this process with preconceived notions about what this was. Even though I was at this point, first time business owner. Okay. So the general idea of, we can just do a reimbursement and let people choose what they want instead of shopping and group buying and all this other stuff. Wow, that's cool. So that idea, even though it was the category idea, Oh shoot! I just refreshed my screen. Sorry, people. Tony, you wanted to come live. Why not? How about this? I'll finish my thought here and then bring you on too, because it's always good to show other people's examples. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going here quick. The idea of the category, if you will, was appealing, but I had some preconceived notions about the pains and things like that. Then I mentioned, so great, I'm excited. I'm excited about the general idea. Great. Now I'm searching. I'm searching who offers QSARA plans. There was a couple of vendors that popped up. At that point, it was still I was pretty far away from making a decision. So timing wasn't that important. I looked at a couple websites. I think there was 2, Take Command was one of them, 2 or 3. And then moved on. Then I got a recommendation from our accountant. She had heard about Take Command specifically. Great. So then I went back there and in my mind, I was like, oh, wait, I remember looking at them. And it ties with the original idea they got excited about. Cool. I go there and review their site. And then I'm skeptical about, oh my God, this seems like it's going to be a potential pain to administer. Right? Because how could it possibly be this easy? I've seen benefits before. It's a pain in the butt. Okay, so that's my skepticism. Then we move forward. Again, I'm skipping steps here. And I spoke with some business owners that were some were using Take Command, some were using others, but confirmed that, yep, this is really simple. It's really easy. It's great for employees, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's questioning. I went to people I could trust, whose opinions I trusted, to confirm whether this was the right path forward. Once they confirmed it, now I was committed. Then I shared with my business partner, Gabby. I said, hey, we're going to do this. This is what we should research. And I'm thinking it's going to be this company. Let's go talk to them. Right? I was convinced, and now I'm committed. I'm externally committed. I've now shared with somebody else that we're going to move forward with this. Okay? So the same exact thing works in B2B. Tony, if you're still on, here is a link. Feel free to pop in live. We'll talk through your example. And while you're figuring that out, if you are still on, you asked a question about how do you factor in community creators and the Nick Bennett from Alice effect. That's actually a perfect example of people, right? It's your people have a relationship with Nick Bennett. So wherever he goes, they're going to maybe not automatically, but they will build an affinity to that brand because of their relationship with Nick, because the assumption is, oh, well, if Nick is there, it must be good. Okay. So that's really what I'm talking about. Now, you can have a creator doing this, but also, your individual SMEs. So, all right, Tony's here. Let's bring you on, Tony.
Hey,
Tony,
how you doing?
What's happening? Thanks for joining.
Absolutely.
Before I forget, which one of these bad boys do you want? You want the cards or you want the Cinco game?
I think I actually have them both.
You do? Okay, well then,
so
in that case, you can still have one, and you can send it to a friend. Surprise them.
I'll take the Cinco game because I know I have the cards, but not sure about that one.
Cool. All righty. So, what's your example? What do you want to? Let's talk through it.
Trying to think of my last big expense. I know that, like, when I was searching for podcasting equipment, I asked Joseph Lewin about a platform for streaming, and he recommended Riverside. So that was my first, so I ended up going with Riverside because of that. I had asked someone else about a microphone. So most expenses that are something that I'm going to rely on to create something good, I'm depending on someone else's opinion to help me make that decision.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And I think that's another example of the whole people build affinity through people, ideas, and groups. Right. So when let's take the Riverside example. And again, I'm going to extrapolate a little bit and tell me if any of this is wrong. You talk to Joseph because you trust his opinion. He runs podcasts, he participates in these lives, etc. So he clearly knows at least something. So you went to him and he told you about what Riverside is good at, and that idea of what it is good at resonated with what you were maybe concerned with or worried about.
Yeah.
Fair? Okay. So that's now a combination of people and ideas. Right? And in terms of the relationship, it's a little harder on these smaller type purchases, but it still plays, right? Something got you excited about from what Joseph told you. You're like, wow, that sounds cool. That seems like that would be really useful. Great, now you're excited. Probably there was at least a twinge of skepticism, like, well, is it really going to work? Right? Is it? What do I need to be aware of? Like, what are the potential pitfalls? Right? You maybe asked him some of those questions. Right? There's some level of skepticism, and automatically there, your skepticism, probably because you were live with him, was skepticism and questioning were there right at the same time. Right? That's what I mean. It could happen quickly, or it could take a while, or you might skip it. So in that case, you had that. Right? At that point, this was a very quick decision. You didn't need multiple things. Maybe you probably looked at their site. You probably looked at their features. Some of those features probably got you excited again, and that got you very quickly through, right? You're like, well, can I try it? Well, they're a PLG play. I know this because we use them, right? So, well, it seems like it's pretty easy. I can do a free trial. So that skepticism goes away. PLG is great for that. Great. I'm going to sign up. I'm committed. I'm convinced. Boom. Now you're trying it. I don't know if you're paying for it now or not. Are you?
Not right now. I switched to Zoom.
Okay. So so this is actually interesting, right? Something after trying it made you think, you know what? It's missing something. It's missing something that I care about. What was that?
It was essentially it only works on Google Chrome, maybe another browser, but that's pretty much what it works on. It's hard to bring in other guests. And if I'm working with people who, are not familiar with podcasting, or they won't,
okay,
ease of getting in, Zoom is much better.
Yep.
Because everyone knows Zoom.
Everybody knows Zoom. Something wasn't working as well. Maybe you ran into a technical thing trying to bring somebody on. Okay. So that brings up a skepticism. Like, well, is this really the right platform for me? Clearly you decided it was not. Again, going back to I'm going to pull up the slide here again. If you cannot get over at any point in time, even after the original decision was made, right? You're like, yep, I'm committed. I'm going to do the free trial. I'm going to try it. Cool. Great. I'm committed. I'm maybe even excited about this new feature. Something doesn't work. I'm skeptical. If you cannot get over the skepticism, see, I'm out. It's that simple. And you move down to Zoom. This plays literally, again, if anybody else is on and wants to walk through this, these play in every single instance. All right. Thanks, Tony. I'm gonna keep going.
All right. I'll see you.
All right. So, all right. Hopefully that illustrated that example and that concept pretty well. Now, Tony actually talked about, asking for input, right? He reached out to somebody he trusted. It was an external person. Granted, Tony was an individual making a purchase, right? But even in a corporate environment, you might still reach out to an external person you trust rather than an internal person. So the question now is, all right, who's the decision maker? Right now, in Tony's case, the answer to that is pretty simple. Well, it's Tony. He's the only one making that decision. He's not making it as part of an organization. But in, say, our case, the example I was giving, I was the decision maker, but there were other influencers involved, not least of which my co-founder and business partner. At that point, the decision we were talking about in terms of benefits. So her opinion was extremely important about what would work, what wouldn't work, etc. This brings us to last concept. Everybody always wants to talk about, well, we got to focus on the influencer. You see this pervasively across industries, and it leaves a lot of money on the table because it stops you from building the right relationships. You have SDRs and SaaS specifically oftentimes disqualify either external consultants or lower level internal influencers because they're not the decision maker. They don't have that VP title or the C-suite title. So they will maybe slow play it, or they just disqualify them, put them in an automated cadence, all that kind of stuff. And it definitely happens with the external influencers. I can't count the number of times I was doing research on a client's behalf, and I filled out a form, and it was crickets. Why? Because I didn't fit their ICP, quote unquote. Little did they know I was doing research for their ICP. So I think even the concept of ICP to a certain extent needs to change. It's not just about building relationships with the decision maker. There's this entire pyramid of people that are involved. There's these vectors of influence that are there, and you need to really dig deep and understand them and invest accordingly. Okay, let's think about, there's a very common thing that you hear. It's like, oh, well, we need to go after the people that sign the check. No, we don't. Oftentimes the person that signs the check has no freaking clue who you are, what you do, and they don't care, especially in large organizations. Because the responsibility for that budget line item, even if they're not the ones signing the check, even if they're not the ones making the final budget approval, let's just say, they're the ones making that decision. We see this all the time, right? The economic decision maker is oftentimes not the actual decision maker. They're pretty much going to say yes to whatever the actual decision maker says, as long as that person can make a good case. And in larger orgs, a director level person is likely overseeing a huge budget, and they've already got that budget approved, and it's up to them to decide how they're going to spend it. The CFO isn't going to care. Now they're going to care if budget needs to get cut or something like that, but they're not going to care for the original approval as long as that overall budget was already approved. So, and the other thing is, oftentimes that decision making, the economic responsibility gets passed down several levels. You got people with, a max spend of whatever, 10 to 30K on their corporate card. They can just make a decision like that without having to ask anybody. So that's the whole, let's focus on the person who signs the check thing, complete BS. Missing tons of opportunity. Here's the other thing. I mentioned external influencers. Both examples I talked about personally included external influencers. Had virtually nothing to do with anybody internally at the company. We see this happen all the time with our clients too. I mean, think about how often somebody might come and listen to our podcast or come onto this show these lives, and that's not a decision maker, but maybe they're an internal influencer. Maybe they're several levels down. Maybe they're down here. And something that we say on here really resonates, and they share that internally. Now, all of a sudden, we've got awareness internally. Oh, if that same message resonates, now we've built affinity internally. Right? Now we're indirectly influencing a decision maker potentially. Now we're part of a conversation that we could never be part of directly in a room. Right? This happens all the time. So invest accordingly, right? Think about inviting and engaging external influencers. Invite them onto your podcast, invite them to speak at your events, engage on their content, all this kind of stuff, right? Think about partnership programs that are focused on co-marketing with like-minded organizations that are in the same industry or share the same vision of where an industry is going, that kind of thing. Okay. Think about taking part of your media spend and focusing it here instead of everything here. So let's assume your decision maker is the VP. Maybe you should spend some money on the director and / manager level to build up affinity, so that when they get tasked with, hey, we have a problem with whatever, sales enablement, or we have a problem with, customer marketing and building relationships with people or whatever, they can go, oh, well, have you heard of such and such company? I've been to their events and they talk about so-and-so. We might want to talk to them. Okay. At some point, an external influencer might be that person too. Okay. There are groups out there like, CMO groups where a bunch of CMOs in a particular industry go get together and talk about different issues they're having and what they're doing that's working, not working, vendors they're using, all this kind of stuff. Maybe they invite a speaker. That speaker says, oh, you should consider such and such. Well, now all those decision makers, say it's the CMOs, now they are considering you because of that. Now, there's also the other thing. Maybe they ask, right? So in that same group setting, one might ask the rest of the group, hey, I'm struggling with such and such. What are you all doing for that? That answer might drive them to look at your website, look at your content, consume your podcast, consume your research study, whatever it is. And then that builds affinity. And then we go from there, right? They get excited about the idea. Maybe they see your CEO who's speaking at an event. Maybe they get excited about them as a charismatic leader that believes in what they believe, all this kind of stuff, okay? So you need to be focused on not just the decision maker, right? And all of this, again, getting back to our topic of relationship velocity, that's what we're trying to build. How quickly can we build relationships, quality relationships with the right people so that we can drive revenue? And not just drive that initial purchase, right? It's not about that initial purchase decision. It's about the loyalty and the advocacy and all that. So the idea is we build relationship velocity when we're able to make the right people feel that we understand them. And we've proven that we can solve their pain and their problem, right? They have bought into your ideas. And they built relationships with your people and groups. And you do all this by focusing on conversations, not touch points, not transactions. Okay. So again, let's think about people build relationships with people, ideas, and groups. The people side of things ties into the second concept of the relationship journey, because at some point, inevitably, there's going to be external questioning. Somebody is going to go and ask, hey, team, who do we know that does this? To their internal influencers. Or they're going to go to their external peers and they're going to say, hey, I'm looking to solve XYZ problem. Who do you all know that does this or that's good at it? That external questioning at some point in the journey is inevitable. It's going to happen. So what we need to understand is what gets people excited. Right? What are the existing beliefs they likely already have you can tap into? What are they generally skeptical about? What are the common experiences that they've likely had in the past that you need to address? Okay. Tony's example from earlier, ease of bringing people on. Well, doesn't work in all browsers. That might be a problem. How can we address that? If I'm Riverside, I need to have an answer to that. If I want that business. Okay, I need content that answers those questions. In the example I was talking about earlier around healthcare benefits, administration burden. Administering benefits is a giant pain in the butt. That's going to be a question. Anybody that's dealt with it, either directly or indirectly, knows that exists. So you need to have content that answers those questions, that addresses those skepticisms. Because again, addressing skepticism is your fast track to keeping that journey going, to building that relationship, to building that trust. Now, again, at some point, someone's going to ask a question externally. So you need to be getting in front of and answering the questions of internal influencers, external influencers, making it easy for them to recommend you or to help that decision maker get over their skepticism that they're going to have, because that's why they question. They're going to have a skepticism about how easy is this to administer. Hey, have you used this before? Like, is this really as simple as they say? Yes, it is. Okay, cool. I'm in. Right? Maybe they can give an example of how they've done it, how they've used it, etc. And then that again ties into the people, right? The relationship pyramid. Who are the right people that you should be getting in front of? So I'll give you a bad example of a recent and current decision-making process. I'm currently I'm evaluating 2 vendors. Okay. And the reason this is bad is because they clearly have not done the research to understand what makes people skeptical, and they have not necessarily done the research about what gets people excited. And if they have, they're not using it well. So researching a couple of different vendors in, I'm not going to label it, I want to call them out, in a particular space. Okay. Started the process late last year with one vendor that came recommended both through a partnership with the current vendor that we use, and also through our accountant and a few others, business owners that I'm connected to. It's a very similar story here as to the other example I gave. Research them, schedule a demo, at least tried. Forget the fact that the demo was kind of blah. Okay, they didn't really understand what a small business really cares about. They tried to sell me on all the enterprise level type features, I think, rather than talking about things like the simplicity of administration and all this kind of stuff. Then I went to another vendor, a competitor, and again, the messaging was fine, but nothing really like the idea never really resonated that much. I know it's something we need to offer. It's another benefit, okay, just to maybe highlight the problem. So I'm gonna make a purchase anyway, but I'm probably gonna end up doing it begrudgingly at this point, because in both cases I didn't really understand again what I potentially be skeptical about, what gets me excited. In both cases, the salesperson, again, I know we're generally talking about marketing, but sales needs to play with it, obviously. They tried to sell me on this fake urgency thing around, oh, well, if you sign in the next X number of days or whatever, you can save a couple $100. I don't care. That's not what's going to get me excited. For that matter, now you just probably alienated me. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Do you think I'm cheap? Do you think a couple $100 is really going to make a difference for me? And oh, by the way, they know, because they know how many users are going to be there, because they understood that during discovery. So they should be able to do the math. And ask themselves the question, is this person really going to care about this? Right? Instead of coming to me about, hey, inviting me to a webinar about or a demo or a live demo or something, or sending me a video testimonial from a company similar to mine about how easy this is to use and how happy the employees are, whatever. Any of that would have been better to help build that relationship, to help get over skepticisms, to touch on things that I would be excited about potentially. They didn't do that though. So now guess what? The process is stalled. It's going to take longer. I'm going to make a decision anyway because I have to, but I'm not going to be happy about it. So I'll leave it at that. I know we have a few minutes left. Looks like a few folks are still here. If you have any question about any of the stuff we've just talked about, let me know. Pop a message in the chat. And here's the link again. You can join us live here. So in case anybody wants to join, I'll give it wait a few minutes. Otherwise, to wrap it all up with a bow, I suppose, the goal needs to be relationships. The relationship needs to be at the center of everything that you are doing from a go-to-market perspective. That means sales and marketing. The quality of relationships and the speed at which you build relationships should be the core units of measure of your marketing success. And the way that you do that, as I mentioned, is really deeply understanding what gets people excited, what do they get skeptical about, whose opinions are they going to trust and seek when they can't make up their minds, when they can't get over the skepticisms on their own. Those are the three most important things you could be doing to build better relationships and to build better go-to-market. All right, so with that, looks like there are no questions. I'm going to wrap it up, and I hope to see you all next week. Thanks all.